مشاهدينا لقاء جديد، برحب فيكم عبر شاشة مريم تي في من بلاتو مريم تي في من برنامج جديد وطلة حلوة، برنامج سفرة مع سفير. بيسعدني بهالمناسبة استضيف سعادة سفير الأرجنتين في لبنان السيد ماوريسيو أليسيه. Hello, His Excellency Mr. Ambassador Mauricio Alise, Ambassador of Argentina in Lebanon.
Good morning.
¿Cómo está?
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very honored to talk about Argentina, my country, a country that I always say to fall in love with.
All right. This is our great pleasure and honor to host you, to have you among other ambassadors in our episode Trip with Ambassador in Mariam TV. To Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us. Today our topic is about Argentina. We're gonna make this virtual trip to Argentina with you, Mr. Ambassador, and we need to know about bordered countries of the region. As we look at the geographical map, we go through the climate, official language, independence date, and the main historical step of the country. Please, you're most welcome.
Okay, there are so many things to talk about Argentina that I'm going to try to follow that order. You know, Argentina is, in its shape, it's like a triangle, inverted triangle, with its base in the north. And it's the second largest country in South America. It is also the second largest in Latin America. It's the fourth in the whole American continent, which means the three Americas, North, Central, and South. And it's the eighth largest country in the world. You know that it's largest country, when I say it's one of the largest countries in Latin America, because in its total extension it covers approximately 3.7 million square kilometers, which comprises the 23 provinces of the country, together with the district capital, the southern islands, and part of Antarctica. We have Argentina as also the country surrounded in the north by Paraguay, Bolivia, in the east Brazil and Uruguay, and in the west by Chile.
Exactly.
And of course in the east by the we are also big part of our country is covered by the Atlantic.
Lucky you to be surrounded by the most beautiful countries too. Chile,
Absolutely.
Bolivia, Brazil, and so on.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, Latin America is also part of a continent to be discovered for all the fantastic things it includes.
Fantastico. And the capital is Buenos Aires.
The district capital is Buenos Aires, and Buenos Aires is also part, not only the district capital, but it's also part of a big conglomerate, which is Buenos Aires.
As we see on the screen, this is Buenos Aires, Mr.
That's
Ambassador.
Buenos Aires,
yes.
with the obelisco, which is one of the central areas of the capital, and it's quite famous because of that view, exactly that view currently showing. Argentina has fantastic views. I think we will have the chance to talk about more in detail of the different views and the offers that the city has to visitors, especially foreign visitors who are charmed by its views, landscapes, monuments, architecture, culture, and of course tango, which is one of the major cultural exports that Argentina has.
So such a riqueza.
It has a huge richness,
exactly.
yes.
Exactly. If you want to talk about the flag, the symbols of the flag.
Well, you know, the flag was created in February 27, 1812. As you see, the colors are light blue and white, with the yellow sun in the center. The golden sun, it's called also the golden sun of May, because in some way represents the events of May 1810 that were recognized by history. But also, you know, it has been a motive that has been formally adopted later on in time by Congress, the National Constituent Congress, and it was also taken as a model for the flags, national flags of other countries in the region, such as the countries in Central America.
Yes.
El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Honduras, and some others. And also some of it has been replicated also in some way by Uruguay. So the Argentine cockade is another of the Argentine symbols, and it has been replicating the colors of the national flag.
Yes. Okay, and if you want to talk about independence, main date of Argentine, 1916.
1816.
1816, excuse me. If you want to go back to history, 1810, the
Well, you know,
population didn't want to be under such a system of can you tell us about the system at this time?
well, you know that the countries in Latin America were under the rule of Spain, so we were Spanish colonies by the time, but the movement of independence was growing rapidly among the former colonies in the region.
Mm-hmm.
Jorge Luis Borges, who is one of our most famous writers, said that the independence of Latin America was a major entrepreneurship of Argentina, because our national liberators contributed to the liberation of the whole region and also contributed to expand and to spread the desire for independence, for liberation. And then a long time it also was an active participant in the process of developing an integration among the region. But let me tell you that the first attempt took place in 1810, when there was a call in the city of Buenos Aires to open Cabildo, which is some sort of town meeting,
Okay.
that assumed or established an autonomous government on 25th of May 1810 that would rule in the name of Ferdinand VII, who was toppled and had to flee Spain. By then, the possibility of acceding to independence immediately was very difficult, but the seed of independence was
Why
already in
difficult,
the people,
Mr. Ambassador?
which came after time, basically, when there was a call for assembly, a constitutional assembly,
Mhm.
that took place or that met in Tucumán in
Okay.
1816 and declared independence. That's our famous date, on 9th of July, 1816. That's one of the major dates together with, but we celebrate independence, as I said, because of the first seed of independence was expressed in at the Cabildo Abierto on 25th of May, 1810. But those are parts of the major dates that we take into account in our calendar. You know, there are many dates that are relevant in history. Many events took place in the development of our country. When you look back at events like Argentina suffered some coup d'etat, and the restoration of democracy on October 30th, 1983 is a major
Historical step.
Historical step,
Exactly.
absolutely. And we have been living in democracy since then. So the consolidation of democracy is always something quite cherished by Argentines. The date of the flag, that the flag was created, even though it was created in 1812 on February, we celebrate the creation of the flag on 20th of June. We also
General
Manuel Belgrano, who is also
Yes.
part of our
He was drawing
independence
this
process.
flag.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. And then we also celebrate the day of the Veterans Day and of those who fell in the war of the Malvinas in 1982, and we celebrated in the period of, on April 2. We also have the 24th of March as the National Day for Memory, for Truth and Justice.
This is amazing.
Yes,
This
and
is
together
amazing.
with, I mentioned one of our major liberators who was General Juan José de San Martín, who not only contributed to our own liberation and independence, but also to the liberation and independence of other countries in the region. We celebrate the 17th of August, the day of his death. And then we also celebrate on October 12th what we call the Day of the Cultural Diversity. It was the day actually that commemorates the arrival of Colón, but also the encounter of two worlds, you know, the old world, the new world.
Diversidad cultural.
Diversidad cultural, exactly. As you know, well, Argentina has received many immigrants, and we were always looking at the ideas and the influence and the arts of the old world. Europe was very close to us, particularly countries such as Italy, such as France, that we looked at, and you can today see their influence in Argentine culture, Argentine literature, Argentine architecture.
It's an open gate for all cultures, almost in the whole world.
Absolutely.
This is what they say.
Absolutely.
Sí, seguro.
Absolutely. So you have many things that nowadays are part of our culture and belong to traditions that many immigrants brought to our country. Let's say, for instance, Italians and Spanish people brought not only their language, their tradition, their culture, but also things like their own culinary practices, gastronomy, you know, and their desire to build a nation. We always say that we are a nation that actually was built on the basis of the contribution of the immigrants who came to make our country a developed one, to make it a big one.
Un desarrollo del país.
Exactly. And you know, many immigrants wanted originally to come back to their lands of origin, and that didn't happen. Most of them decided to stay in Latin America and in Argentina, in our case, and they found Argentina as their new land.
Mr. Ambassador, I have a question. Entonces es un país de desarrollo y de diversidad cultural. How many main community do we have over there? The Italian, the Lebanese?
Well, the largest communities are the Italians and the Spanish people, because they arrived in different migration flows across time, particularly after the wars, the major wars. And then it's interesting to mention this. The third largest community is the Lebanese one.
Estupendo.
You know, the Lebanese, the Argentines of Lebanese ascendancy are actually quite spread around the country. You can find them in Buenos Aires, you can find them in Mendoza, in Santa Fe, in Tucumán, and they contributed also actively to our development and to our literature, for instance. There was recently at USEC University a Congress of Argentine writers and philosophers of Lebanese ascendancy.
So the Lebanese community are very active over there.
They are very active, and they are very active in all the different milieux, even the political one. We have, for instance, also our first lady, who is of Lebanese origin.
Yes.
Her name is Juliana Aguada, and many people here cherish her name when the Argentine President Mauricio Macri was elected.
Exactly.
Then we also have other figures who were recognized in the field of politics, in the literature, in the areas of even medicine. So they are present and they are part of our culture. And even though there is no official registry, because most of them are second, third generation, they are Argentines.
So it goes back to history.
Yes, definitely go back to history. Nowadays, there are approximately 1 million, between 1 million, 1.5 million
Wow.
Argentines of Lebanese ascendancy. But they arrived, it has to be taken into account, in the 19th century and part of the 20th century.
This is amazing. And this is very old. It goes back to ancient times.
Yes, definitely. Well, you know, Argentina has received many immigrants in the 19th century and in the 20th century. And this is interesting because those immigrants also brought, when I said their cultures, they also brought their language.
Mm-hmm.
In Argentina, even though the official language is Spanish,
Okay, and other
you
languages?
will find that, for instance, the Welsh community kept, which is living in the south, kept and still speak their own language.
Mm-hmm.
There are many places where Italian is quite common, and of course Germans also, those who migrated to Argentina, kept their language. In Córdoba, a province where I was born in especially Villa General Belgrano, many people there speak fluent German, and they kept their own traditions. They even have their own Oktoberfest.
So we can say it's a mixture, una mezcla de idiomas, of languages. The main official language is Spanish, and thanks to other communities, it entails other language that are German, Spanish, and Lebanese spoken in Argentine. Can we hear it?
Well, actually, I can tell you that not many, as far as I know, not many Lebanese speak Arabic. Apparently, it's something that they lost track with.
Yes.
So there is probably some work to be done there, especially from Lebanon, to promote.
To learn their native language at
well,
least.
To probably promote the that the Lebanese in the diaspora speak Arabic.
Yes.
Because they feel more Argentines than.
Mr. Ambassador, if you want to talk about the etymology of the name Argentina.
Well, the name comes from
Argentin?
yes, well, it's the Latin name for silver, argentum.
Exactly.
And you see it in poems from Martí de Baco Centenera, which date back many, many years ago. There were also some reference to the Rio de la Plata that dates back to the 16th century. So the reference is a very old one, and let me tell you just briefly something that we omit when I made the reference to the language. Even though the official language is Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, due to our the different ethnic groups that have an indigenous origin, native origin, they kept also their own language. I'm talking about Guarani. Guarani is also a language that is officially recognized and spoken in Corrientes, which is one of the 23 provinces
Do you
in Argentina.
have good command of the Guarani?
Sorry?
Do you have good command of this language?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Do you speak it?
I don't speak it, but it's you know, it's officially recognized and spoken in Corrientes. It's one of the languages that is officially recognized by Mercosur,
Mm-hmm.
which is the you know, the integration group that was formed between Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, and Uruguay.
Okay.
But then you have other languages, indigenous languages, which are, for instance, Quechua, which are Mapuche, Mocovi, you know, and I have a long list that can show you, you know, how spread those languages are, because they are part of different regions and different areas in in the country. You also have the Wichi, you also have, well, the Guarani, for instance, we have in 3 other provinces that Guarani is spoken. Nowadays, you know, Onas, for instance, in the south, ethnic groups today are also an important part of our culture, of our identity when we speak about Argentina.
And they take part in the normal political life and elections and so on, as I understand from you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
They are recognized, and they also make part of our identity and our population.
And what's about the climate?
We have a very diverse climate that actually varies in different provinces, in different parts of the country. So in the north, you have warm tropical climate. We also have temperate climate, mostly in the center. The climate is also temperate and moderated by the influence of the Atlantic Ocean in the south. But we also have a polar climate, very cold weather in high elevations. So you have a high diversity in climates. It's like having a lot of different countries in just one single country.
Perfectly true. And before we end this section, this introductory section of our episode, if you want to go browse any webpage for visa requirements, as we know, Argentina is a very nice country and we want to visit it. What are the requirements? So any page to click on and have some terms and conditions to read?
Yes, definitely the best way to get all the relevant information for our visa program would be to check the website of the Argentine embassy,
Okay.
and also the specific website for the consulate is www.elbno.cancilleria.gov.ar.
Flying to Argentina, from Lebanon to Argentina, flight time?
Well, you have different options actually. Depending if you go through Paris, for example, you have the connection there from here, which is about 4 hours, and then from there to Buenos Aires would be in a direct flight approximately 13 hours. But you can also go through other countries in the region, and it would take you approximately between 18, 22 hours, 23 hours altogether.
This is quite far, Mr. Ambassador.
It's quite far, but you know,
It's worth
Argentina
it.
is so charming,
Yes.
and it's full of attractions.
Exactly.
It's a country to be discovered, a country to fall in love with. That is worth the trip.
This is what we're going to discover with our viewers in the second part for the most attractive touristic sites in Argentina. Una pausa, Mr. Ambassador, y volvemos. مشاهدينا فاصل صغير وبنرجع لكم. مشاهدينا رجعنا من الفاصل من برنامج سفرة مع سفير. بهالمناسبة بيسعدني كمان رحب بسعادة سفير الأرجنتين في لبنان السيد ماوريسيو أليسيه. Thank you again, Mr. Ambassador, for being with us and providing us with such valuable information about Argentina. If you want to talk now about G20, what can you tell us?
You know, it's when we were talking about important dates, one day to single out is the G20 summit that just ended in Buenos Aires, took place on the 30th of November and the 1st of December. The G20, the group of 20, is a major grouping or gathering of those economies that have a major impact, developed globally, developed and developing ones. I was the sous Sherpa for the G20 before being posted here as ambassador to Lebanon. And it's a gathering that contributes quite significantly to the global agenda, addressing all the relevant topics of that global agenda. Our motto for our presidency of the G20 that started in December last year and just ended was building consensus for fair and sustainable development. The three main priorities that we chose for our G20 presidency were the future of work, infrastructure for development, and a sustainable food future. And this is important when we talk about later on women in Argentina. We also included a gender mainstreaming in all the different working groups of the G20.
Economically speaking, that's why we say that Argentina is the third superpower nowadays in the world, economically.
I'm sorry?
Economically speaking, we say that Argentina is the third superpower in the world, or at least in the United States of America.
Well, I think Argentina is among the emerging economies and the most significant ones in Latin America, together with Mexico and Brazil, who are part of the G20. That's why we are part of this grouping of nations.
This is
because
amazing.
Of the systemic impact of our economies that go together with other emerging economies. You know, emerging economies contribute to 60% of global growth. And some important information about the G20, that the G20 covers countries or gathers countries that cover 85% of global GDP, 80% of global trade, and 3/3 of global population.
If you want to go now, talk about the political structure and system and executive power in the country, what can you tell us, please?
The country, well, Argentina has a presidential regime. So we have a president who is in charge of the executive power, and he is elected for, can be elected for 2 consecutive terms. The first term is a 4-year term. He can be reelected for a second 4-year term.
So and 8 years in total?
Yes.
2 consecutive terms, 8
yes.
years.
And, you know, he, or the president, is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The president is the head and of the public administration of the country, and he can appoint the military, civil, and federal judicial officers in the country. Also, of course, he appoints the ambassadors abroad, like in my case.
Yes, your case.
Of course. And then we also have the Congress, the National Congress, which has 2 houses. The 72 seat Senate, where the members are elected for a 6-year term, and they represent, they are elected on the basis of 3 representatives from each province and from the district capital of the city of Buenos Aires. And then the Chamber of Deputies, whose members are elected to represent the population of the country. There are 257 seats. Their members are elected for a 4-year term.
Yes.
The National Congress sessions go from 1st of March till November 30th. The Legislative Assembly is opened annually by a speech of the President.
Mm-hmm.
And the President also can call for an extension of the sessions beyond the 30th of November, as I was saying.
Okay. And if you want to talk about religion.
Well, you know, that's very important. That's a very important topic, because Argentina is a country where religious coexistence has flourished.
Okay.
And it's a major characteristic of our country nowadays, where interreligious dialogue spread, and is one of the elements that actually today you will find as a major characteristic, as I said, of Argentina. All the different religious communities live peacefully next to each other. We have mostly Christian communities, you know, traditionally Argentina has been a Catholic country. There is prominence of the Catholic Church there, but also many Christian groups have spread along the years. And also it has one of the largest Muslim community in Latin America. The Jewish community is the most important one, the largest one in Latin America, and it's the 7th largest in the world. And like I said, you also have, we also have other religious groups that have freedom of worship in Argentina. Nowadays, there are recognized and registered around 5,000 religious entities in Argentina.
Okay, now, Mr. Ambassador, we want to cover the touristic part of our episode. We will start with the capital, Buenos Aires, that is the main pillar of the country and the vital pillar of the country. We will have to show some photos on the screen, and you will tell us more about it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, that's probably the major, one of the major expressions is tango, where you see the arts, the music, the dance, the tradition all together in expressions, particularly in Buenos Aires.
Mm-hmm.
Traditional places like Plaza Dorrego in San Telmo or Caminito in La Boca are those who conjure up images of traditional tango near the port of the harbor of Buenos Aires. More modern images like this one make part of our landscape. This is probably one of the most modern areas in Buenos Aires, who has been recently, or just relatively recent, developed. It is, together with the obelisco that we see there, part of the traditional images of Buenos Aires. You know, Argentina is a country which receives a quite huge number of tourists. Approximately 6 million tourists arrive each year in Argentina to visit all the different areas.
This is amazing number, a big number.
Country. It's the most, it's the country that receives the largest number of tourist visitors in Latin America after Mexico, which talks about the importance of Argentina from the touristic perspective. Not only the culture, not only the landscapes, their traditions are calling for the attention of those visitors. There are many things to discover there while being in the different regions and the different provinces in Argentina. Each one has its own flavor, its own way of calling the attention and enticing the people and attracting the people to come and visit Argentina, even though we are almost, like many people say, at the end of the world. Actually, Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in the world, is also a quite relevant point to visit, attract the visit of many people, together with El Calafate in Patagonia. You know, Calafate harbors host one of the most relevant places to visit nowadays, the glaciers. There's a national park which is part of UNESCO, UNESCO World Heritage, and we have El Calafate and Glacier Perito Moreno as the most significant one.
We're going to discover these main touristic sites together, Mr. Ambassador. Now, a short video will be displayed about Buenos Aires, then Cordoba. Thank you. So, Mr. Ambassador, this is an amazing short video display about Buenos Aires. What can you tell us?
It's a short video. There are so many things to show there that it's probably not enough to gather the
Definitely.
flavor of Buenos Aires with just a short video. But it's true that you can see most of the images that are part of our life
Main
in Buenos
identity.
Aires. We have tango, we have gastronomy, we also have the province of Buenos Aires, the attraction of estancias, and the asados, the gauchos, the horses. But the city of Buenos Aires is also interesting for its cultural life. You know, it has the Teatro Colón, which is our opera house that dates back to the 19th century, and it has been recognized as the opera house with the best acoustic in the world by people like Kaufman, one of the major tenors nowadays. We also have libraries. The bookstores are amazing and are spread all over the city. Buenos Aires has the largest number of bookstores in the world.
Nice.
Cultural activities like theaters, there are plays everywhere. There's a theater district along Corrientes Avenue and the surrounding streets, and we also have the off district in areas such as Palermo, for instance. Argentina has the largest, Buenos Aires particularly, is the city with the largest number of plays, largest number of theaters in the world.
Okay, from Buenos Aires to Cordoba.
Cordoba is a Mediterranean province that has a lot of history to tell. When you go to Cordoba, you can visit the traditional, well, that's one of the traditional schools, one of the oldest schools in Latin America, next to the National University of Cordoba, which was one of the first universities in Latin America. Traditionally harbored the law school there. That's why it received the name of La Docta. But then you have magnificent landscapes and views like this one, for instance, in the mountains, in the hills, that take you to and allows you also to practice sports like paragliding and hiking, trekking.
I call it magic when I see such lovely photos.
It is magical, very magical. You know, there are some remains of Jesuit reductions in Cordoba that are also part of our landscape nowadays. And then, you know, the old architecture is everywhere. There are remains of the colonial architecture, not only in the city of Cordoba, but also in the interior of the province, that you will never get tired of driving around.
And this architecture goes back to?
Well, you have, like I said, remains of the 19th century. The Cathedral of Cordoba was one of the traditional sites, and it's probably one of the most visited one in the city of Cordoba. And in the surroundings, you will find many other old colonial houses and buildings. The rivers, of course, are another attraction in Cordoba. There are many major rivers that circulate through the province, and of course, old
Lovely
Jesuit
facade.
reductions, like I was mentioning before, and we see in the picture.
Such a lovely facade.
It's a lovely facade, well, together with everything that you can see in Argentina.
Yes.
You know, like I was saying, Argentina is a major tourist attraction.
Exactly.
But not only Cordoba, I mean, many other provinces harbor incredible treasures that amaze the visitors.
And now a video will show about Cordoba. So, Mr. Ambassador, after having discovered lovely Buenos Aires, lovely Cordoba, we will go to Cuyo. What can you tell us in short terms? And we see the photos in parallel.
Well, Cuyo is the region, one of the regions in Argentina that also call for the attention of tourists nowadays. You can see that it borders the Andes Mountains, and therefore you can practice different sports there, like we are seeing here, but also you can practice hiking, trekking, skiing in the mountains there. And you also have fantastic views and landscapes like this, and that are part of the also a depiction of not only the landscapes, the mountains, the soils, but also the fauna that we see here in this picture that is quite traditional of the region. Probably also another thing that the region is famous for is, well, of course, the images are sufficient to show how impressive the landscape is. But also I was going to say Cuyo has become famous for the wines. Argentine, el vino argentino is quite well known, not only, of course, in Argentina, which has a big domestic consumption. It is. But also, you know, it's quite recognized around the world, particularly Malbec, who is, the production of Malbec is nowadays between 36 and 40% of the wine production, across with other different types of cepage. So Cuyo is one of the most visited regions in Argentina nowadays. But it's a region that you need to spend many days. That's also another thing to take into account. Argentina is quite a large country, and you need many days to visit the country, and mostly you need to travel. By traveling, you need to get on an airplane.
And this is a video about Cuyo. Mr. Ambassador, some photos and some very amazing photos about Litoral.
Well, the Litoral is also another region that is quite attractive in terms of history, but also in terms of its natural beauty. So we'll see, I guess, some images that suffice to show how beautiful the region is.
What do we see here, Mr. Ambassador?
Sorry?
What do we see here?
We see here is part of the Mesopotamia region.
Okay.
You know, the rivers, the major rivers that for part of the system, particularly the Paraná one, together with the Paraguay River and the Rio de la Plata basin, make part of the system that spreads
Carnaval.
from part of that area. Well, the Carnaval, of course, this is not like the Carnaval in Brazil, Rio,
Rio de
but we
Janeiro.
also have our own Carnaval. We are seeing part of the Iguazu Falls, which is also World Heritage and a national park. It has 275 falls, waterfalls. The fauna is also quite typical of the region and is diverse from the region
Skyrocketing
of
fauna.
Cuyo that we were seeing. So the scenery is magnificent in the Iguazu Falls, and
Wow.
of
This
course
is
the
very
river
beautiful.
that I was mentioning before, that is the
Romantic
Paraná River.
bridge.
It's quite a romantic
Yes.
village. Well, images and sunsets like the ones we were seeing make quite a romantic picture and image. And horses are everywhere in Argentina.
See,
You will see them. They do not belong to just one single province. They are everywhere,
the main
together with the
identity.
remains of the history and traditions.
And then a video will follow about El Litoral. We will see it now. Mr. Ambassador, I always hear people saying Patagonia is amazing, fantastic.
Well, they are right.
Why?
They're just telling the truth,
What's
because
the
it
main
is.
cliché about Patagonia?
You have quite a diverse climate. The soil is quite different. It goes from arid to a very light brown kind to one that is also green and fertile, and also you can see the snow there. So cold weather is quite typical and associated with the south, with Patagonia. Patagonia has different provinces that make part of the region, and they're quite relevant in terms of the landscape.
As we see
like
in the
this.
movies.
Yes, you have seen
Really?
many movies
Yes.
and from that region, and it's famous across the world. To also a place to visit, to practice sports like skiing, and
Many ski resorts.
definitely together with Mendoza. Mendoza is in the region of Cuyo, and which borders the Andes Mountains. But we also have the whales. And that's another attraction, particularly at the end of the year, when that's when they get close to the coast together with penguins. The Pinguinera de Punta Tombo is also quite well known in the south of Patagonia. and it harbors the region many lakes and national parks, together with the one that I mentioned in Calafate. That's the Glacier Perito Moreno, which is a national park of glaciers, but we also have national parks like Los Arrayanes, which is also UNESCO World Heritage. So
Wow.
that's one of the largest glaciers you can walk
This
on.
is paradise, no?
It is
It is.
really paradise on earth.
Exactly.
That's why I was saying,
Wow.
Argentina is a country that you can really fall in love with.
Exactly. And a short video will be displayed then, just to see more the littoral. Entonces, Mr. Ambassador, ahora del sur al norte, vamos a descubrir el norte de la Argentina.
Well, you can actually do that through a national road, that is National Road 40, that goes from Santa Cruz in Patagonia in the south to La Quiaca in the north. It stretches for around 5,000 kilometers. You can do that, and it parallels the Andes Mountains. But in the north, you also have many different landscapes that go from the ancestral Andean north and the lush jungle of Las Yungas to the Puna, where the legendary train in the cloud takes you and it makes you feel like you can really touch the sky with your own hands.
Wow.
Then you also have the Valles Calchaquíes, where you can encounter the Cuesta del Obispo, Cachi, Quebrada de las Conchas, and Cafayate, which is the perfect place to the so acclaimed Torrontés wine. And the landscape, but also the traditions of the people there are different from the people in the south. As you can see, the variety of landscapes in Argentina are part of its trademark.
And lovely
tradition.
colors.
And of course, colors and traditions, remains of our origins and culture. And of course, when you look at places like this,
These are
you are
rocks?
breathless. You
White
remain breathless.
rocks?
Yes.
Wow. And we
You also
can
have the train to the clouds, which is today, I mentioned, it's today something that tourists really value when they go to the north, especially to Salta, you know. You also have amazing places like this one that you feel not only breathless, but you feel how relevant, how big and impressive nature is.
Very impressive, and we're gonna see this video. Mr. Ambassador, I have a question. Can I go now to Argentina? It's very amazing.
Well, I think you should.
Yes. Okay. Entonces, vamos a tomar una pausa y volvemos.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. مشاهدينا فاصل صغير ونرجع لكم. مشاهدينا رجعنا من البريك وبهاللقاء المميز مع سعادة سفير الأرجنتين السيد ماوريسيو أليسيه في لبنان. نحن عم نتعرف على الأرجنتين بكل الجوانب المتعددة لهالبلد الجميل. Entonces, su excelencia, vamos a descubrir ahora la gastronomía en Argentina.
Gastronomy is also one of the things that characterizes Argentina, and it's also attractive for all the visitors that come to visit our country. Starting by what we call asado, which is barbecue. It's basically the Argentine beef, most of it, but it's not just limited to the beef. We also have other dishes that are quite famous, like stews, such as carbonada, where we are seeing the typical asado, the typical barbecue. Those are the images that are quite common in Argentina. The beef part of the cow, like chorizo, so morcilla, you know, different parts of the cow make part of
This
what we
must
call
be very
asado,
delicious.
which is delicious.
Yes.
Absolutely, and you can eat it everywhere, wherever you go in the country, not only Buenos Aires but also the rest of all the provinces. It really makes you feel hungry now when you look at these images. But also, I was saying, you also have stews like
Corn
locro,
soup.
which is made out of It's not a soup. It's a stew made out of beef, beans, corn, some vegetables. But you also have, and that's something that people enjoy in the winter time.
This is a typical
It's a typical dish,
dish.
and it's also a typical dish for the celebration of in our national celebrations in May, and
Festivities.
particularly the festivity in July of our independence. But also you have carbonada, which is another stew with meat, with brody stew. And then we also have things like puchero, which has meat, sometimes even chicken, with vegetables.
This is a short video, Mr. Ambassador, now that will be displayed just to see a live cooking dish.
Asado, as I said, is part of our gastronomy and is convoking the interest of the visitors. Well, we have beer, but it's not our national product. It's more, I would say, wine is the more typical of Argentina, as I mentioned, particularly Malbec with other cepage. We also have empanadas that normally accompany asado that we see here, which is a puffed pastry, a stuffed pastry that is quite common everywhere. Wine, as I was saying, that is something that we typically use to accompany asado. Mate, it's, you know that we export mate to this country. So in some part of Lebanon, you will also see people having mate, which is quite common in Argentina. Yerba mate is a product for export, but also for domestic consumption.
Wow.
And wine is, as I always say, it's always there. Now, especially now that has probably is replacing more and more coffee as an excuse for friends to gather. Not only coffee, but also wine is now an element that helps to put friends together through a nice, friendly discussion while enjoying a product that is typically, you know, Malbec, but can also be Pinot Noir, Merlot, etc., or Torrontés, which is the white wine typically from other regions and provinces in Argentina.
Must be very
the
delicious.
stuffed and the stews that I was talking about, locro, carbonada, and you know, well, the images are actually enough to show, you know, that's the coffee that I was talking about, but the pastries that are quite common there, especially alfajores, which is kind of like a cookie, a shortbread cookie sandwich with dulce de leche jam, or caramel jam, I would say. Dulce de leche is quite famous in Argentina. It's a typical product. So definitely, well, vegetables are traditionally
assorted
accompanying, yes, assorted vegetables accompany typically grilled assorted vegetables accompany asados. You know, when you go to visit estancias, particularly in the province of Buenos Aires, but also in different parts of the country, you are received, you're welcomed by a typical asado, a typical barbecue.
Well, this video is fair enough to show us the very delicious gastronomia del país.
I would say so.
And if you want to talk about economy, since you have skyrocketing gastronomy and food product export and import, what can you tell us?
Well, you know, Argentina has many natural resources and products. Its exports are made of commodities, basically manufactured products, and also part of our resources are for exports are grains, oilseeds, also beans, livestock. We also have enormous reserves in oil and gas, and now after many years of buying, we are now exporting natural gas. Also, we have reserves of minerals such as silver, copper, uranium, even lithium in the north of the country. They are part
These are the
of our
pillar
economy.
of the economy.
Yes.
And
yes.
what's about macroeconomy, مثلا
Well, you know, our GDP is around 600 billion US dollars nowadays, and our economy it's resurging, I would say, and opening up to the world nowadays during the current administration. We are exporting to Lebanon. The exports to Lebanon are not quite significant, and normally it goes around 113.6 million US
What are you exporting
dollars.
mainly?
Mainly, we're talking about pellets, pharmaceutical products, corn and grain, milk, derived products, chickpeas, yerba mate, like I was mentioned before, black beans, peanuts. We're also mineral products, culture and natural pearls, plastics, and some manufacturers, iron, etc. Basically, are those the essential part of our exports nowadays. On the other way, the imports from Lebanon are not quite significant. The products of Lebanese origin are normally related to some typical traditional food preparations here in Lebanon. We have, of course, our major economic integration mechanism down there, which is Mercosur, which, as I said, involves the countries of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, with some neighboring countries as associate members of the bloc.
A good partnership between
It's a good partnership.
countries.
It has been, our economies are integrated, and we are cooperating quite actively among us. There was a memo of understanding that was signed in 2014 between Mercosur and Lebanon, with the prospect of negotiating a potential free trade agreement between Mercosur and Lebanon.
Entonces, ahora si vamos a hablar de las mujeres, los derechos de las mujeres en el país, women empowerment, women rights, and women occupancy, gender equality, what can you tell us?
Well, Argentina is highly committed to gender equality and the promotion of empowerment, economic and political empowerment of women. They have, throughout history, contributed quite actively to our national development and to our national economy, and they also make part of all the different structures in all the different areas, not only in government, in politics, but also in medicine, in literature, and quite a diverse variety of areas. Now, currently, the gender policies are among the 100 government priorities of this administration, which also include 8 of the strategic objectives related to sustainable human development. In particular, to implement policies that guarantee the participation of women and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in public life, to promote also gender equality through legal reforms, and to implement policies and measures aimed at eradicating gender violence, as well as providing comprehensive care for victims. Not long ago, in 2016, the President presented the first National Action Plan for the prevention, the assistance, and the eradication of violence against women, which is a strategic planning tool that gathers and systematizes policies, programs, and initiatives addressing this from a federal and interdisciplinary perspective.
High initiatives.
It's part of many, many different initiatives that go together with the Gender Parity Initiative that is carried out by the forum that took place in the Davos Global Forum with the Latin American gathering that took place last year in Argentina that promoted, and Argentina joined the gender parity initiative, which is carried out by the Forum Together. There is a National Institute for Women which is working on the design of the first national equality plan, whose presentation is expected in March 2019. Also, gender parity is present in areas such as political representation. You know, Argentina was one of the first countries in the world to establish a quota for women participation in electoral processes.
Amazing.
In congressional legislation that went from 5% to 30% in 1991. Now the decision is to go to the next level, to increase in participation and to ensure for the next elections starting in 2019, to ensure the participation, female representation, to rise to 50%.
And a lot of awareness programs and campaigns are established thereof.
Of course, and this is like an initiative from the federal government, but also, you know, many provinces have joined similar efforts and went in that direction to ensure also female participation in Congress, in the local legislatures. There is going to be also quite active work in different mainstreaming for all the areas that are relevant for women, not only for the care, like I was saying, the participation of women in different areas, not only politics, but also promoting women entrepreneurship, promoting gender equality. Buenos Aires, the city of Buenos Aires, was one of the first cities in the world to adopt a legislation on same-sex marriage. But also Argentina is, I mentioned the importance of prevention and punishment and eradication of violence against women. Argentina is part of the International Convention, the UN Convention on fighting discrimination, avoiding discrimination for women, but also is part of the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention and Eradication of Women. Human rights conventions such as this one is in the process of acquiring a constitutional hierarchy, which talks about the importance that Argentina is giving to human rights and also to gender rights and the importance of women nowadays in our country. Also, I was mentioning the relevant normative framework that with clear constitutional mandates to guarantee real opportunities and equal opportunities for women in all different areas. It's important to mention also that you know, the new civil and commercial code that was reformed just recently stands and includes some legislative advances on gender equality. It recognizes also the importance of economic value of work at home.
A lot of work, Mr.
Absolutely.
Ambassador.
And then domestic workers. Also, there is just legislation adopted for domestic workers to avoid informality, which was common in the past. Nowadays, it's not the case. Nowadays, all domestic workers are registered and receive the appropriate attention. Also, talking about workers, you know that in Argentina there is the law feminine union fee, which establishes the integration of women in elective and representative positions of trade unions, which is quite unique and it's not
Definitely
quite
unique
common.
comparing with other countries.
Definitely.
Unique.
Also in education, it is worth taking into account that we have a law that establishes that all education establishments, such as schools, universities, they have sessions on education and equality, prevention and eradication of gender violence, with the objective that students and teachers develop and strengthen attitudes, knowledge, values, and practices that contribute to preventing and eradicating gender violence.
So, Mr. Ambassador, as we see, Argentina is raising flags high in order to protect women and raise gender equality among both genders.
Like I said, women make part and contribute actively to our development nowadays. And they are part of the development of Argentina in quite many diverse areas. Was mentioned the example of politics, Congress, but you know, we also in the Foreign Service, we have recognized importance for women, and we make sure that there is appropriate representation for the new diplomats that are selected to join the Foreign Service.
Hopefully, looking forward and hopefully for the best for women in Argentina. Mr. Ambassador's presence in Lebanon, what do you love most about Lebanon? And we wish you best of luck for your diplomatic mission.
Thank you. You know, it's going to be 4 months since I arrived here, and I'm in the process of discovering the country. I'm in the process of meeting all the relevant people in this country. I'm starting by the authorities of the country. After presented the letters of credential to the president, I also visited the prime minister. I also visited the. We were looking at the meeting that I had with the members of the Argentine League before. Some participation in the universities I was invited to, and some recognitions, and the view of from my office, and of course here presenting the letters of credential to the president, General Michel Aoun, and of course, as I said, I met with the prime minister, with the leader of Congress, and with other relevant authorities in the country. You know, Lebanon is a quite unique and exceptional and diverse country. Sometimes with different and I would say overlapping levels of reality, but it's so diverse and so fascinating at the same time.
Thank you.
I'm amazed by the warmth of its people.